Oh, so welcome everyone again, now that recording started, to Microsoft Excel Toronto Meetup group. Normally the sessions are run by Celia Alves, who started the group and is our MVP and extremely knowledgeable about Excel. And unfortunately today Celia can't join us. And so you got the substitute teacher, Gráinne Duggan. I usually do the background stuff, so you may have seen my name in the chat and me popping up with the questions once in a while, but today I'm afraid you're stuck with me and my horrible voice, so bear with me. And I have wonderful news. In July, we have two marvelous sessions coming up. And I'm so excited about both of them. One is July 10th with Carlos Boboso. And if you've ever seen Carlos, I don't need to say anymore. He is just absolutely spectacular. And he's doing gorilla pivot tables for exploratory data analysis, and that should be a real mind blower, because figuring out what's wrong with your data is like the first step in analysis. Well, not the first, but way early. And it's just his way of presenting it is marvelous. So that's July 10th. So please join us for that. And on July the 24th, we've got another mind-blowing presenter. We have Melissa DeCourt. And anyone who's seen her stuff on LinkedIn or any of the meetups or presentation will know that she just knows everything there is to know about M-code and Power Query. And fabulous, fabulous presenter. You just always learn way more than you thought was possible. And she's doing based on a poll that we did of the members that they got to vote what the topic was. The topic is, by popular demand, Power Query building solutions with custom M functions in M. And it should be a real great session. And the reason I say that is because Melissa wrote this book, and with two other people, Gregory Deckler and Rick de Groot. And I can tell you the thing is 700 pages. I'm 1/3 of the way in, and it is mind-blowingly detailed, but it's not for beginners. If you're just starting out on your Power Query journey, this is not for you. It's not about the UI. It is strictly about manipulating the code. But once you get to the stage where you want to do that, you have to have this book. It is spectacular. So enough of the sales pitch. Sorry, guys. All right, now women in Excel, and Matija was there at the birth of Women in Excel. We started at the Global Excel Summit in London in 2024 in February, and we were all in the meeting rooms, Matija's meeting room, and discussing different things that we'd seen at the event. And it came to our attention that there was a lot of women attending, but not that many proportionately presenting. So we decided that there needed to be a space where women could learn to be comfortable and learn from each other and support each other. So we created this LinkedIn group. I will be posting all these links later in the chat. I don't have time right at the moment. So if it's a LinkedIn group for ladies only. I'm sorry, gentlemen, but this is to make the women feel that they can just chat away without distractions. And so we're going to be doing something quite exciting this week. Friday is going to be our very first Blooming Excel meetup for members of the Women in Excel group only. And so if you join the group, you can attend this Women in Excel meeting. It's being run by a woman from Eastern Europe. I forget which country she's in, and I can't pronounce her name any better than I do Matija's. So I know it's Sylvia, that part, I think, or sort of close to Sylvia. But anyway, so that should be interesting first. So anyone, women are very, very welcome. We'd love to have you join. Then the Active Cell is having Microsoft Excel and Financial Modeling Training Camp in December in Las Vegas. So Celia managed to get a discount for anyone that uses her code. So if you use that QR code that's on the screen at the moment, you can get a 10% discount off if you would like to attend that conference. Then Celia has some resources of her own that you can use. She has a monthly newsletter you can subscribe to. I'll put the links in the post in the chat. She has a monthly newsletter you can subscribe to. She has on her website a tab for books that she recommends. We have the Microsoft Excel Toronto Meetup YouTube channel, which this recording will be there in a few days. Then Celia also has her own YouTube channel where she posts videos on the how-to stuff, and they're marvelous. Then she also has a website, a blog with links to all her videos and posts about how to do loads of things in Excel. So it's worth checking out. And we thank Solvent Excel, that's Celia's consulting company, for paying any of the costs that come along with running a meetup. So thank you, Solvent Excel. And now the highlight. We welcome the one and only, and I'm sorry, I'm starting up front. I'm having trouble saying his name. I have very bad hearing, and I'm not hearing his last name properly. I've got the first one. I'm not getting the last one. So Matija Prijatelj, and that's really messing it up. So I apologize. So welcome so much to coming, and thank you for this presentation. I just wanted to say to everyone, we met at the Global Excel Summit. Matija was in the Zebra BI breakout room an awful lot in the networking area, and the other rooms were not terribly well attended. And then, oh, Celia's just joined on her phone, so she's monitoring. She I don't know if she's going to pop in and talk, but she's monitoring the chat at the moment. So we met at the summit in the breakout room. The others weren't attended, and we chatted, made some friends in there, and discussed the different events that we had seen or were going to see and what we liked about them and what we didn't like about them. And we just, mostly it was raving about the different presentations, such as Carlos Barbosa, his presentation. But I've got to say, one of the highlights of that event for me was Matija. He actually, on quite short notice, was asked to give a presentation on the main stage for 15 minutes. And I think you had, what, a day or two's notice?
I found out at 10 at night, and it was the next day at, I think, 1:30.
Yeah, so less than 24 hours notice. And Matija put together a 15-minute presentation that was spectacular. It was so good. It was so well paced. You learned a ton. And so I am really looking forward to what he can do when he has time to plan and an hour to present. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. And I normally, Celia would give a little bio, but I'm going to let Matija do that for himself. And it's just because if I talk longer, I'm just going to rave more. So you don't want to hear that. So thank you so much. I finished all the screens. I think that's it. Yes, I have. So there you go. So Matija, your turn. Tell us about yourself and then your presentation. And I'll stop sharing now. And you can start whenever you want.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for having me here. It was awesome meeting you at the Global Excel Summit, and I'm very happy to be here, especially talking about something that I'm very passionate about, which is storytelling. The thing is, today may be a little bit of a different presentation that you as an audience of the Toronto Excel group are used to, as there will be a couple of cool tricks in Excel, but in an interesting way, they will not require you to be very specialized Excel master. So I had this weird, what was it say, a dichotomy inside of me, right? When starting to write this presentation about storytelling, which we decided to call, so give your data the chance to tell a story with, of course, there had to be a pun there, with excellent visualization. And of course, I really like Excel. And to tell you how much I like Excel, I made a little bit of a bragging slide. I've been working in Excel since, I think, 2014 for my professional life, which means that right now I have 10 plus years of experience in finance reporting, financial controlling, and business intelligence, and statistical analysis. So a pretty broad spectrum of things that I've done. And with each one task that I had to use Excel. And I had to use Excel in ways for which Excel was not meant, just like I believe that many of you use it daily as well. Now, I already said that I'm here because of one of my passions, which is talking about storytelling. And storytelling is a very important thing in my life. I believe I have a little bit of a gift to tell stories, um, a gift to understand what a story needs. And I'm always trying to put some of this, so my passion and my talent, into my data as well. So into my reporting, into everything I'm doing. And I hope that today, while talking to you, I can bring this a little bit closer to you. A way that I then also put my creativity out there is, if you maybe have heard of Zebra BI, I have become a content creator for Zebra BI, and I usually host content on our YouTube channel where you can find interesting videos about Excel, but also Power BI. But I mustn't say Power BI here because this is an Excel group, and no, I'm kidding. Of course, we love Power BI as well, right? Especially now when Excel and Power BI, especially by data capabilities, are really close together, right? And of course, all of us here know that Excel is not going anywhere. So let's talk a little bit about storytelling and how we can do it in Excel. So to talk about storytelling, first of all, we have to define, right, what storytelling, what data storytelling really is. And it should be easy, right? But as I kind of found out in all my years doing this, it's really not as easy as it seems, or maybe it's not as easy to give a definition in the way that I, as a data analyst, my whole life really understood it, right? And I'll come to the way that I'm defining data storytelling a little bit later. But, well, the thing is, data storytelling now has become a very, very popular topic with many different definitions, or maybe not even different definitions. The definitions are usually pretty close to each other. However, with any book that you read on data storytelling, any video that you watch on data storytelling, the words they use to describe the key elements of, or the way that we are supposed to do storytelling, or the way that storytelling is supposed to be, let's say, follow certain different points, is always different, right? This is especially true when you're watching, let's say, a video from somebody that's working more as a consultant in a consulting field, or somebody that's, let's say, a little bit more of a data analyst, right? Of course, those two go hand in hand, but it's the small little details that can make a difference. So what I want now is I really like interaction, and I think you guys will see this. And I wanted to give you guys a chance to actually tell me a little bit about how you guys view storytelling, because it's such a big topic. But before we go into this, let's move on, and of course, let's look at what data storytelling actually is. So what I have here is a definition of data storytelling. And of course, when you had a question in the past and you needed the definition for, or you needed to know something about, you would ask Google, right? But of course, today in the age of AI, we're using the definition made by ChatGPT. And let me read it to you just so we kind of understand exactly what we're going for. So data storytelling is supposed to be us communicating some insights that we've found from our data, and that we kind of packaged into a narrative combining data, visuals, and then some context, right, to convey our message effectively. Does that sound about right? I hope so. But now I kind of see this definition going in two different ways. Okay, so in my head, I can actually explain this definition in two ways. So this is now where I need your help to see that if it's only me that sees it in a certain way, and if all of you guys see it in a different way, and then we'll kind of discuss this a little bit later. So maybe if you could get out your phones, you have a QR code here on the left of your screen, just to give you guys a little bit of a voice. Take your phone, scan the QR code. You should be able to join the Slido, and then pick pick the representing answer that you think best represents the way that you would define data storytelling. So if I ask you, how do you understand the definition of data storytelling? I can see it going two ways. As a presentation where data is used as supporting points and facts. Perfect. Somebody else also sees it like this. And then on the second point, right, using data visualization in a way to get more insights from the data. Okay, so we have these two options, and okay, we now get one for each, and this is already perfect. So the point is, oh great, great. So it's about 50-50. And see, this is what I love. So whenever we're talking about a definition of something, right, this usually doesn't happen. So we have 10 people now that have answered the question, but we're actually interpreting the definition in a different way. Okay, so it's a little bit more going toward the presentation where data is used as supporting points and facts. And of course, I understand here, especially as I can already hear you through the screen saying, but you know what? Even if I'm seeing this as a presentation, right, I still have to use data visualization to get more insights from data. And I understand completely. Okay, so we'll leave it here. And well, there's no hiding it. Most of you are actually correct, right? So data storytelling, and I'll just move on a little bit here. So data storytelling is, you saw the first part of the definition, but I specifically left out the second part just because I want you to kind of see where my mentality was when thinking about data storytelling, is that it involves transforming raw data into a meaningful story, right? That engages and informs an audience. So something that I'm doing right now, right? And with this helping us understand more complex information and in the end make better decisions. But let's really focus on something that we read. So an audience, right? Well, this means that when we're actually talking about data storytelling, we're actually talking about presenting data. So we're talking about something that I'm doing to you guys right now, right? I'm presenting something and then I'm using different numbers and facts and visualizations to simply show that what I'm telling you is correct, right? Okay, perfect. The point is, I think that this makes perfect sense. However, I kind of see it a different way, right? I don't only see data storytelling in a sense of presenting the data as a presenter, but I actually see it as more of a data analyst. So, but what does this mean, right? So when I used to work as a data analyst for 8 years, I've rarely actually had the chance to present a dashboard that I created. So there wasn't many times where I would create a new sales dashboard and somebody would say, okay, Matija, now come in, tell us the story of our sales. Never happened. Literally never happened. I would have gladly done it. Never happened. Usually people go and they open up the report and usually you just get stupid questions over Teams or whatever you use, which is pretty much just like, why are we not selling as much? And you're like, I don't know, you're the sales guy, right? How am I supposed to know? And see, this is where the problems start to begin, right? Because mostly when we're talking about presenting or data storytelling, we're thinking about how can we support our hypothesis. This going more into my science, right, based approach. How can we support our hypothesis by showing some data that is actually going to present this data to the people and actually make them care about what I say, right? So making it seem like, yes, what I'm telling you is true and you should do something about it. And so I think that as a creator of reports and dashboards, I can still use some of these steps or key focus points of data storytelling to actually help me improve on the way that I am generally creating reports and the way that I'm actually communicating my data. So what I'm trying to say is, although most of you are right, and data storytelling in the most cases that you will find, actually I haven't actually found the one that I'm speaking to about you today, except for a few of my colleagues when we were discussing things like this. I never really see it in literature, however, is that data storytelling doesn't actually have to be just in a presentation, but can also happen just by sharing a dashboard. And so this is what I'd actually like for us to take a look at today, is how to just change the way that we visualize data in a way that we add storytelling elements to help people come to the conclusion, or maybe even better, create the stories by themselves, right? So we're actually going to try to create a playground for storytelling. Okay, that sounds pretty exciting to me. I hope it also sounds pretty exciting to you. So let's continue and let's stay with this mindset that, okay, data storytelling is presenting data. Okay, and now let's look at the typical structure of the way data storytelling is supposed to go in regards to presentation. And let me just put a little bit of a disclaimer here. Just like with big data, just like with all the biggest buzzwords, it's always the point that the 5 points, so the 5 typical structures that I put here, you can find different names for this depending on the author or video that you're watching. However, they usually go into the same, at least the same range of meaning, right? So let's maybe go through them and let's see what we have. So with a data presentation, what we were supposed to start with is an introduction. They usually tell us to start with an introduction where we explain what we're going to talk about, explain our problem. This is usually, in science, we would say our hypothesis, right? So just like we started today about data storytelling, right? Then with data exploration, visualization, we would start to talk about how we gather the data, what kind of data we did. We would visualize it so people would understand it a lot more easy. And then we would pick specific insights and put them into context to make our story more believable, or maybe even make you understand exactly what's going on, right? After this, we'd put all this into a narrative so you understand what the actual point of everything is in the end, and in the end would also give a suggestion. Now, when I think about, again, me working on my dashboards, and probably most of you guys working on your reports, a few of these steps are missing for us, right? Or maybe not missing for us, but are a little bit different in the sense that we would actually use them in a presentation sense, especially here with the introduction and the conclusion and suggestion. So when we're talking about introduction, usually I would kind of equate this, right, as getting an ask to create a report or a dashboard. So it's something that we need to explain, and then through this, define the data and see how we're going to position the data, see what kind of data we're going to use, and talk to our end users about it. Maybe we could equate this with an introduction. However, this would make it part of a bigger storyline, not actually the maybe storylines that the data would present later itself, right? And also with the fifth, so the conclusion and the suggestion, we also have quite a big problem, because usually I can't be there when people are looking at their reports going, you see, now you're not selling enough. This is not good. You're not supposed to do this, and this is because this, and I would advise you to do more of this. This usually doesn't happen, right? I don't have this ability. People are usually looking at the reports on management meetings, or maybe they're doing this in their car, usually because they're late, and then they don't even care, because it's just too much data for them, and then on the meeting is just everything except for what it's supposed to be. So when we're talking about, I think we should focus on these 3 points, right? With the introduction, I will allow you to think that this is the initial conversation, and then what can we do inside of these 3 points to actually make our visualizations, make our narrative, make our context better for people to understand. And it's time for me to stop talking as much about theory and start talking a little bit more while I go into Excel. And first of all, I'll start here. So Not really a typical data source that you guys might find. However, it's still a pretty good, okay, I hope this is gone now, but still a pretty good for just presentation purposes. So what we have here is just a simple table with our actual numbers. And this is actually a pretty, so contrary to a lot of beliefs, right? This is actually data visualization already. So just a normal data table is part of data visualization. If you guys use Power BI, you know that a matrix is also part of data visualization. However, it's very loosely, right? Very loosely would get in there if you ask me. But of course, we can now visualize this data. And if we go into insert here and just insert, let's say, a nice little column chart, we get it. And Excel always makes it in these interesting colors, right? Right now it's blue. And okay, what we can discern is we can discern some trends, right? But pretty much what we're looking at right now is just a lot of kind of numbers, right? So these numbers are telling us something, or they're not really telling us the whole story. So imagine this.
Excuse me. Can you just zoom in a little? People are saying they're having trouble seeing the screen. Marvelous. Thank you.
No problem.
I was too busy paying attention to pay that it was small. Sorry, guys.
Thank you, Gráinne. No, thank you, Gráinne. Very good. Yeah, please tell me. The thing is, the resolution between the two screens that I have is one is 180p and my main is 4K, and then it's completely weird. So I hope that you guys can see it now well. Although I don't really want you to pay most attention to this because I'm able to create better visualizations, I swear. So, but right now what we're looking at, okay, so we have something, but we just have a couple of numbers. We can decide some trends because we have data that is sort of like this. But let's say if we focus on March, okay, we can see that March is higher than February. We can see that it's a little bit better than April, but in context, like, it was March better for us or was it worse for us than, let's say, previous year, right? And this is mostly what we're talking about, putting data into context, especially on dashboards. So when you have the chance to give it a narrative, let's say for March, right, we could say March was a perfect month for us because of a million things that we did, and all of this then showed itself in achieving, let's say, 170 million in revenue, let's say, right? However, now on the dashboard, we don't really have this place, right? We can't really do that. So the best way that we could do something like this is if we would add something to compare against, let's say our previous year, okay? And with this now, what we've done, we've given context to every one of our actual figures. I'm using here the names of actual and previous year. This is a little bit more of a planning financial type of way, but you can just imagine it says here 2024 and here it says 2023. Okay, it would make perfect sense, or anything like that. And now, okay, so now what I want to do is visualize this data. Perfect, let's go again. We're going to insert it and we're going to insert it to that 2D column chart. Perfect. Or maybe if we want to be even extra special, we would put in a 3D one, right? Just to make it even better. However, that's not always better, right? I'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later. But right now what we have is we have a pretty cluttered chart with grid lines that we maybe don't need. We should delete this. We can also delete the scale. We should maybe add some data labels, right, like this. And then maybe even data labels here. Okay, so you can see the numbers a little bit better. And okay, I mean, it's looking better, but the colors that we're using, really high contrast, which was, I guess, good to see. But I always had trouble, let's say, defining or seeing data trends when I'm looking at them like this, right? So in this way, let's say, when we're doing visualization, one thing that we can do, right, is we can try to make things a little bit better. So maybe we can try to get rid of, just like I show you, we can start to get rid of some of the grid lines. Then maybe add some colors that are not as vibrant, something like this, but are still pretty good at contrasting, right, one from the other. And now what we get is into a set of rules Okay, so this is interesting, right? Storytelling, then data visualization, which is usually the most creative of spaces, right? Especially with Power BI, with everything that's going on, with Excel having incredible charts, with everything we can do in VBA, with everything else we can do in visualization. He's talking about standards. And where I would like to kind of go into this in this point, that if you want to create a story, right? Even if you're a storyteller, you have to go by certain rules to make the story good. Okay? So now I'm gonna do one horrible thing. In this chart, I wouldn't say is actually that bad. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it would work if you would want to, let's say, show something, but I'm going to use now an add-in to help me visualize this a little bit differently. So what I've done here now is, before that we had the chart, right? We had two different columns, and if we wanted to do the difference, we would have to do the difference in our minds. We would just have to compare one and the other, maybe even do some calculating with the numbers. Or this would usually be the way, right, that we would do it, which is pretty much just actuals minus our previous year, and then we would get, okay, this is not broke points visualization, but you understand. So this is something that we would get, maybe even put in some conditional formatting, so we'd have red and green numbers, which would be a start. But in today's age, things have gotten so far that now we have different add-ins that can help us visualize data a little bit different. And why I'm specifically showing this is because the add-in that I'm showing, well, it's not to spoil anything, it's Zebra BI. So it's actually made by the company I work for. However, why I'm showing you this is because it's using certain guidelines that I believe, and we believe in the community of actionable reporting, that it follows certain guidelines that help us understand and present data in the way that it offers the most amount of story that you can have inside of the visualization itself. So if we just think back, we had troubles defining, let's say, our trends. Here, the trends are easily discernible. You can see that actually in the middle of the year, toward the end of the year as well, things weren't going well, right? However, completely different story in Q1 and in the end of the year. We know exactly where to focus on, know exactly what to pay attention for. And of course, we also see that we get variances, right? This difference between something that we achieved and something that we expected is what's actually creating then the problem in our story, right? So what we're actually looking for is our problem areas, is our good areas. And these are the things that then help us really create a story from our data. So another thing that can help us, which is usually not which we're usually not able to do from the outset with using, let's say, something like a native visualization in Excel, is achieve the data density that we usually need to get to the insides of the story that we're looking at, right? So just seeing here, let's say that, okay, in June, we had the biggest drop, right? We can see that it's the biggest drop because it's the biggest absolute number, but we can also see that it's the biggest drop because we have the relative number here. So this is giving us more data on which we can actually have or do some different results to, or understand the different solutions that we can take, or maybe actions that we need to take. Okay, so this is just one way to visualize something like this. And then of course this point, right, going into the insights and context. So the third point that we were kind of showing on the previous graph of storytelling is inputting these variances and having this context for our numbers to make them feel like they're part of the bigger story. Now, we can also go one further, and we can have something like this, right? And now what we can see here is we still have just one chart, right? But it looks a lot more complicated now. And for a person, let's say, that doesn't know the International Business Communication Standards, which are the rules for how everything is supposed to look. It may be kind of a little bit scary at first when you see it. However, if you spend 5 seconds on it, it makes a lot more sense, and you can see that the data density is really incredible. So let me just show you. This is a very plain table where we have actuals, previous year, or actually budget, and our forecast inside of our table, and some comments actually, right? So if you guys remember, I'll just go back to my presentation that I had for you, if I can find it. So it's here. So if it didn't change, I'm sorry. Here, okay. So if I just go back one slide, we said that we can do a lot in data exploration and visualization. I'll talk about how to choose the right visualizations a little bit later. But now we've pretty much talked about this point number 3, right? Is how to give our numbers the context. And now we can also check out the narrative part a little bit, because as you can see here on the chart, the thing that can help us on any given dashboard, on any given report, is when we have something like this, seeing that there is something wrong, let's say something going on in June, and then having the ability for somebody in the team, I've made this joke before. Well, something weird. Okay, my computer is a little bit slow, but everything's fine. So I've made this joke before, right? Where the sales operations is typing you an email, why are the results bad, right? Well, in the case where they are bad, having the ability to just add a comment, let's say bad shipment or lost shipment, let's say, gives us the narrative and even more context to understand exactly what's going on or was going on in this part of our story, right? And then you can also see that we have our forecast here for the numbers where actuals are not available. So we can also show this, and we can also see the ending of the story. So if everything goes according to plan, how will we perform in the end? And with this, we can then create this whole story about where we need to focus, why we need to focus on that thing, or what was going wrong, and then in the end, how to actually improve this, right? And Gráinne, I can see that we have a question. Maybe we can take a question. Maybe I can then continue forward with choosing the right visualization type.
I don't see a question.
Maybe it was just a hand up.
There was discussion around showing entire charts and data tables and pivot tables about whether or not they were visualization or not. But it wasn't.
Cool.
But I have a question.
Yeah, tell me.
Because I several. Excuse me. So on this particular chart, there's an awful lot of detail in there.
It is.
And if I'm correct, all you had to do was put your cursor inside the data set. Oh, yeah. Duncan sent a thumbs up earlier to show agreement. Oh, okay. That wasn't a question. It was a thumbs up. Thank you, Duncan. So if you put your cursor inside the data set, and then you add the Zebra BI add-in, it created that entire chart for you. You didn't have to do any formatting or anything at this point.
Exactly. So
it was literally push a button once your data was set up correctly.
Exactly. So I didn't want to speak about Zebra right now yet, well, but I think I got distracted
by how cool that is.
Thank you. No, but I think it's actually this is the most important part. So one thing that I kind of want you guys to understand is coming to this type of visualization. We've been doing this, as far as I remember, I've been doing this in my professional career for 10 years. So I've actually come to Zebra BI because of this incredible software that allows me to do something that I usually had to do in Excel by myself. So if you just imagine, let's say, creating something like this, and you can see that it's responsive, right? So we would usually create charts like this. And to understand exactly what we had to do is we had to have our actual number. Then we had to have a dummy column here, which was, and then another column on top of it, which would be the difference or the variance, right? And if the variance was positive, you would need to have another column with another base column because they're different heights, right? To actually be able to show this in a kind of an automatic way. So you're looking at, right now we have just a simple data table here, but let's say 5-10 years ago, this would be half of the worksheet would just be different calculations in the way to make Excel stack columns and make everything look this way. And the thing is that international business communication standards are why this is actually a storytelling marvel, right? Because having these standards and understanding that we can actually present so much data on an actually pretty small amount of space, right? So the data density inside of this is incredible, right? And also understanding that, let's say, green means good, red means bad, which is standards that we're using day-to-day life as well, right? If you're driving, red light means stop, green light means go. Pretty much we're using all of these things that we're already accustomed to, right? And we're putting it into our data visualization in a way that people easily understand it, that people can easily see it, and now they can also do it with just a single click of a button. And I know you had this question for me, and I'll just say this as well. We like that the data is structured kind of like this, so that you have we would call them in Power BI, we would call them measures, right? But here is that we have our values in columns. So we have our values for actual, we have our values for our budget, and we have our values for our forecast. Yeah, forecast in different columns. That way, Zebra BI knows that it has to put each one in its different category, and by the names and by the way that they're positioned, they get positioned inside of the visualization, as you can see here. So you can see that the plan was correctly known as budget, and forecast was correctly known as forecast. And and Zebra BI is using this in the background to understand that it has to color the forecast in this gradient, right? Because forecast cannot be the same as actuals. We treat it like actuals because what we're trying to say is, if we will perform as well as we plan, this is what we will achieve, right? So this is our supposed to be actuals, but it's not our actuals actually, right? And now, if I would do this, I'll just show you this because it's an incredible thing to see. I believe, is that if we insert again just another 2D column chart. Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger so you guys can see. There's no way you're getting any trends out of this. At least not with at least 10 minutes of work to get everything in the right colors, or maybe changing things up a little bit, or maybe even doing the difference calculation like I showed before. And now being able to do this with just a simple add-in is absolutely incredible. And of course, I think the biggest important thing for storytelling, right, is this narrative, okay? And this ability to add this small little comments. I have to tell you, my dad is a great man, and he was a director of a company for a long time, very long time. And he often told me, when I got into data analysis and started working in a company, he said, if they would just put like one line of text just explaining why this is red here, right? Or why we're not doing something, I would be the happiest person in the world, because I would know what to do. And now we finally have this chance to do this. We finally have the chance to use this for Zebra BI. Okay, I'm sorry, I went on a whole storyline about the storyline, and you're muted, Rania. I'm sorry, just so you know.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm just checking. I don't see any actual questions, so I think we can move on and
Perfect. So I hope you guys are enjoying it as much, so that you don't feel the need to actually comment, to actually ask questions. So I hope I'm doing a good job. Well, that's perfect. I love your questions. Okay,
yeah,
so
mutual.
now that we have this, right, we've created this visualization. We've crammed in as much information as we can, but still made it understandable. Now let's talk a little bit about the kinds of visualizations that we can use, right? So as you guys are seeing here, so right now you're seeing a waterfall chart. You saw that I was able to also break the axis so we can see this a little bit better, helping us really focus in on the most important differences, the variances, understanding where our problems lie. And also, if I change this, you can see that we have pretty much the same kind of visualization, right? So what we call this in IBCS is a time series chart, right? So in data visualization, usually we have a lot of different ways that we can visualize data. All of this, right? And we have column charts, we have maps, we have line charts, we have combo charts as well, scatter plots for science, everything. IBCS, really what it does, it kind of takes us a little bit one step back and gets rid of things like, let's say, pie charts, which use quite a lot of room to show very little data. It's very hard to see the difference if you have more than, let's say, 5 or 6 categories. But this is a thing for maybe next time. Maybe focus on this. If you have a time series chart, let's say something like this, I would advise you, and IBCS would advise you to create something that has the categories following on the x-axis, which means that usually this is a time series chart, something where you would get trends out. But we can go even further and have something like this. So now this would require something with a little bit more structure, right? So we can see that maybe these don't follow the same categorical steps. So it's not January, February, March, right? But it's just different car manufacturers. And again, we have quite a lot of data here that we want to present. And for this type of visualization, where we have something that is a little bit more structured, what we would use is something like this. We call it a vertical chart in IBCS. This is, I guess, what would we actually call this in just normal Excel speak?
Isn't it a bar chart?
I mean, it's a bar chart, but it's a horizontal one. Clustered bar. It doesn't say horizontal, does it?
No.
Okay, it doesn't matter. So a horizontal pointing clustered column chart, right? However, we know that we don't really like that visualization too much because you can see just the things just got squished together, impossible to actually see everything. And let's try to visualize it the way IBCS intends it. So something like this. And now what we get is kind of the best of both worlds, right? For this kind of data, and I've already told you before that I'm not the biggest fan of tables, okay? But that's not completely true. I am a big fan of tables, but when I'm storytelling, I want them to have a little bit of visualization inside, right? So you can see here that we have the best of both worlds. So we have here our actuals, our previous year, our plan, and then we also have our variances neatly tucked in here to be better seen. And we can actually change this individually to maybe, if we still want to show a little bit more emphasis on what we've actually achieved, we can actually show our actuals with the visualization itself. And the best part is that we're now getting all of these scaled to the point where, okay, this 29.7 is the exact scale it would be here in the actuals, right? So even from very far away, we can actually tell which ones of our let's say distributors are, let's say, performing the worst or performing the best, right? And again, we have our narrative here as well to help us understand this even more. And just like I said, with just a little comment, we can answer all of the questions that we might have. All right. I also said that I will show you this as well. This is, again, our structured visualization here, right? But it's for finances. And I think this is the best way to actually show finances. So I've been working in controlling, in financial controlling when I started my career. And having something like this would be such a saver for me, because I could never for the life of me completely understand exactly how all of these different categories come together and then finally create the result that we're looking for. I remember we had this in data tables, right? So not like these data tables, but actual data tables or even pivot tables. And what I had to do is then, calculate the totals in between them. And you guys will know that this is incredibly hard to understand, especially if you think about it. If you're looking at, let's say, an annual report of your favorite company, and the way that they present their data in just big data tables on 3 or 4 pages long, just trying to understand exactly what goes together, how they name certain things can be such a hard task. Now imagine that your finance director, right? Or maybe even not your finance director. He will probably understand if you put things like this into a data table. But now try to show this to your sales director. Will he understand it? Does he know exactly what constitutes to income before taxes? I don't think so. But with a visualization like this, is another thing that we're doing is we're creating the storyline flow, right? So we're taking it from the beginning to the end and creating a calculation waterfall visualization where we can see exactly how much which category is contributing to our total, then is then our net income in the bottom. And we can also see the differences or the variances to previous year and to plan here, and get a better understanding of exactly what's going on and better understand the story that we're trying to tell behind the data. And now imagine this. So I'm presenting this financial data to you, and I come to you with just a plain old data table. And what do you expect from me? Well, you would expect from me to have a long narrative telling you exactly what's going on. In the end, after half an hour, coming to my net income, giving you all the information that you were able to discern with just using the right type of visualization, with just adding a couple of comments, right, as well, in mere, I would say, seconds. Now that I'm very good at reading the IBCS style, right? But even if you wouldn't, even if you aren't, this shouldn't take you more than a couple of minutes to understand exactly what's going on and make the story in your head, of course, to make sense, right? Especially with, okay, you can see that the revenues are low. And if we had a comment here, let's say we can see that our product revenue, our sales were not doing this good, right? So demand increased on the old products, but new products launch. Okay, this is a bad comment. But from a comment like this, we could tell exactly what's going on. We would know, if we were the director, we would know exactly who to scream at, right? So this is the biggest problem in all the companies, is when they get a report like this, it's usually the data analyst that gets screamed at. He's like, why are you showing me this data? Why are the numbers all red? Why is this happening? Why? And usually the problem is you don't know why, right? But today, with the collaboration and everything we have, we can easily make the people that need to input this extra little more context, a little bit extra narrative, so at least that your boss won't come and scream at you, but will actually scream at the person that's actually to blame. The last thing I would also like to show you is creating something like this. Let's say this in IBCS, or actually, I mean, it's generally known as small multiples, is then adding the cherry on top to your data storytelling and your narrative building, which is making things interactive. Okay, with just the use of a pivot table and a couple of slicers, something that all of you probably understand very well, something that probably all of you know and understand. Clicking on a certain slicer will change the data in the pivot table, and it will also reflect on the chart as well. So it works the same way. I'm talking about Zebra BI now again a little bit, but it works the same way that it would if you would have a pivot chart from native Excel. So when you change the pivot table, also the data here changes, but you're getting all of this built-in storytelling, which is understanding, let's say in this case, right, what are our best categories, and what's going on with them, right? So you can actually create a story from each of them, right? So what's going on with our baby care, right? And then we can actually see that maybe, I don't know, our computers or our skincare is performing very well, but our skincare is such a small part of our portfolio, right? That it may be better to focus on this problem that we had in Q2 for our mobile, because this will mean that we are going to create actually 5 times more revenue, right? Than if we would push something that we were doing on skincare. Or why not do both? You know, this is the best thing, because you give the ability of the decision making into the hands of the actual decision makers that have all the data now, that have all the information, all the narrative, all the story, and they can make informed decisions. All right, since I'm talking about this, I'll be showing you just another one because we're kind of running out of time a little bit. I know for many of you this is a lunch break. Gráinne told me, so I'll try to wrap it up. I'll try to wrap it up soon, but I think you get the gist of it, right? So it's.
But Matija,
So,
we still have a half an hour, so you don't rush it too much. Like we have,
sure.
it's now your time, 7 o'clock. We have till
Yeah, so
7:30.
yeah, 7-7.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
perfect.
my
You know I
clock's
like to
different.
talk. You know I like to talk a lot, so it's.
That's okay. You're okay still.
Thank you. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I'll slow down. But so what I wanted to say is, I hope you understand what we're talking about. What I wanted to show you with the way that we're using visualization, the way that we're actually adding this context, and that what we're doing in the end, we're actually creating, right, this playground for people to actually play around and create their own narratives, create their own stories that are based on actual data and that are based on things that are going to make sense for them to then later on make decisions about in their day-to-day business. And one thing where Excel really didn't excel, to be completely honest, right, is this cross visual dependencies or filtering that was happening. So imagine this scenario. If I have a dashboard here, right, it's a consolidated financials dashboard, which is showing from my customers, let's say, so I'm actually one of the customers, I'm the manager of Aussie Car, let's say, and I'm trying to see my data from this, right? What usually in Excel would have to be is I would have to select something here, and then hopefully all of the visuals are sliced up with everything else. However, usually these slicers, right, are big, bulky, and everything. So why not just make it the easiest way possible? Just click on the chart, pick my Aussie car as the one that I want to see. And now I get all of these data. So net revenues, EBITDA, my capex, my EBITDA. I have everything here displayed for me, right? Just like I would, let's say, in something like Power BI. This is also possible with Zebra BI, and it's I think one of the most important parts today in storytelling is this ability to actually give people the chance. So give them something that's already structured, but give them the chance to actually explore their stories even more, create their narratives, and in the end come to their own conclusions, the conclusions that actually make sense then in the end with everything that they know. Okay, so this. All right, now let's go back. Let's go back into the presentation for just a couple of more minutes. All right, we already saw this. So in conclusion, about kind of everything that we talked about, right? I'd like to leave you with this. I think that data storytelling is something that is very possible, and it's very possible not only in presenting way of data, but also very possible outside of presentations on pretty much every chart and every dashboard that you create. Keep in mind that maybe following standards is not the biggest creative outlet, right, that you can have, but sometimes in the business world, being less creative is even better because creativity usually means that we're lying about something. So try to create for your users, try to create visualizations, try to create dashboard on which they can play around, discover new things, and then in the end create their own solutions to the problems that they face. Moving forward. Okay, so we have now about 20 minutes for any questions, maybe. And what I've also done is I went forward and the last template that you saw, so the one where you could filter cross visually, I have gathered it for you guys, and you can download it here by scanning the QR code. So you guys can also try Zebra BI, and you can see how well it can work for your data and see how you can use it to create your own data stories. And of course, Gráinne, we've been talking about this before as well. If you have any questions, and even if you would like to show me your dashboards that you create then, or your stories that you create with your dashboards, you can also contact me via email. Gráinne will put it into the chat. But now, are there any questions? Maybe I think you're muted again. I'm sorry.
I don't see any. I'm just looking for your email address, see if that showed up properly for people.
Okay.
I'm just putting your email address in the chat. Whoops.
Perfect.
I think so. If you can check the chat that I did it correctly. Is that the only address you want put in is your email address?
Yeah, it's my work one, so it should be.
Okay. All right. So I got it right. And I get several excellent presentations. Celia had to leave a while ago because she was sneaking out from work, and so did several other people because, as I told you, in Toronto, it's lunchtime just ended, so a few people have left. But they all said, like, great presentation, thank you, and they're going to watch the video, the recording, for anybody that missed it. So that's nice to see. So if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. But in the meantime, I have one. Oh, hello. What are the license fee for Zebra BI? Oh, there's a chat, and it's from an unknown user, so I'm not sure who's asking that question.
Yeah, so it's actually the pricing. I wouldn't go into the pricing now. You can check the website, and you're going to see the pricings depending on the amount of licenses that you would need. There is also one thing that I would like to mention is that we do have a free tier where pretty much all of the things that you would want to try are available to you. You get a version with a little bit of a watermark. However, you can still go and try everything. It does require a license per developer and per viewer. However, I'll say this, that usually the return on investment is so high because of just the data literacy and the add-in doesn't really require any technical knowledge, that pretty much anyone can create very good visualizations, even if they're not from the background like we are. So Excel nerds, or can I say Excel nerds? I'm an Excel nerd. I don't know if you guys are, but I'm an Excel nerd. But Excel nerds or maybe data analysts, pretty much almost anyone can create an interesting visualization or a good-looking visualization with the added bonus of it being then standardized to your own company, right? So yeah, please check the website for the fees, but I would advise you to go and download it anyway, since it's free to try.
Yes, I downloaded the free one a while ago and played around with it. Yes, although I think, and this is actually my question, I think I tried the profit and loss one because I thought, oh, boy, I've tried to do that a billion times when I worked in a corporate environment, and my success rate was nowhere near where I was hoping. So the idea that you could do something that looks so fantastic easily, it was great. But I was getting mine in all the wrong orders. So I think it came down to your data preparation. So would you be able to show us what the table looked like that those charts were dependent on?
Of course. So
it was the profit and loss one.
Of course. So I've given you guys a direct link to our consolidated financials template. However, if you go to the Zebra BI website or just type Zebra BI and templates into Google, you can also find the one with the P&L. And now the best part is that, so the way the data is supposed to be structured here is in a table form, and then you have it set up kind of like this, okay? A thing that you can also do, which this is actually now, if you're having trouble with getting Zebra to kind of work the way that you want to, is you can also just insert, let's say, a table, and it will give you some options, right? So these are all the IBCS options of how data visualization is supposed to work. So the easiest way to find out exactly how to structure the data for a given visualization is to choose the one that you need. So for a P&L statement, we have one here, which is a calculation table, right? And just add this one, and you will see exactly how you're supposed to structure it. It usually is this. We used to call it, I don't know why, like one of my colleagues is always one of my colleagues in the previous work was always kind of messing with me when I said it in a pivot ready form, which is having everything right in single columns. So your categories, then your measure, your another measure, and then your comments in all in columns. So in a pivot ready format, it should work. And then if you need something even more complicated, right? So then you can delete this and you have this, just add what you need, or let's say if you need something even more complicated, again, go here, use something like hierarchical tables for, let's say, P&L. And now you really have things that are pretty interesting, right? But still in the data preparation side, still look pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
So if you're having problems structuring your data, you can also check on our YouTube channel. I think I did quite a few videos where I go through different use cases like this, and you can see then how the data is structured there. Or if you're really having problems, just contact me, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, I am a big fan of tables and tabular data, so that was my first error. I started with tabular data, so it
No, but
gave
I
me kind of
absolutely
bizarre.
understand. No, but
So
I absolutely understand you. So to be completely honest, I also love pivot tables, and I also love tables as well.
yeah,
I remember I created most of my reports were just huge tables of calculations of different things, because in the end, all that the people that I was working for was just thought about a column in the end, right? They would just refresh the data, maybe put in some different values for calculations, but then there were only one column which was actually interested to them, and it was a huge table of all kinds of calculations. So I do hold love for this. However, I would argue that when you're presenting financial data, having a little bit of visualization there sprinkled in, so it doesn't have to be no tables at all, right? It's just sprinkled in a little bit of visualization can help understand this data a lot better.
yes, we have a question. Is it possible to replicate the Zebra BI in Google Sheets, or
It's a very
is
good
it?
question. I don't know how blunt I can be, because you know why they call them Google Sheets. No, I'm joking. Of course. So Zebra BI works in the Microsoft Office environment, so it's not compatible with Google Sheets. However, you can use it also in PowerPoint and in Power BI if you would want, but it's mainly made. I mean, mainly made for Power BI. However, it also works in Excel very well.
Well, I've tried to make those, the column chart with the variations up above,
Mhm.
and done quite well, but it's a
Mhm.
ton of work.
It's
And if you don't set it up easily as your data expands, you spend a lot of time fiddling with moving data points and all that sort of stuff. So it's easier now with the dynamic arrays, but at the time there weren't. And I spent a lot of time every month messing around with those charts to get them to look the way I wanted. And every now and then it would just decide one series, it just didn't like it, and I'd have to
Yeah,
start
yeah,
over.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I remember we had a team of 7 people. And back then when we were creating these kind of visualizations, as far as I tell you, like IBCS is really something that is very important for an organization, because it just adds so much value. It actually takes away so much time and effort for even the production and understanding and everything when you kind of have things completed. But even then we had templates. Those templates just still had to all the time be manually fixed, or maybe sometimes the data label would still show when there was a negative variance, but then it turned into a positive variance. So many things, so many little things that got you. So I'm not saying you're not able to create something like this in Excel. Actually, to be completely honest, the IBCS Institute is actually working pretty much in this way to give you the ability to create all of these visualizations as well in Excel. But I would just don't go that way, because the amount of time and effort it would take would just be too much.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And
I created so many charts with here's the chart, and then there's the variations,
yeah,
and getting them to line up so the right month lined up with the right
yeah,
variation. And it's all down to messing. It's not, you couldn't just sort of make it lock So it always stayed in line. All you'd have to do is have somebody drag an edge by accident and you've lost
and
it.
it's over.
Yeah, no, it was tough. And then when you said about never doing the presentation, I know that mine was worse because my people, they didn't want the spreadsheet. They wanted it printed on a piece of paper. So my interactive dashboards were printed on a piece of paper and I handed them out. So I mean, I love the fact that we're interactive, but I'm the only one that knew it.
So they would actually
Fold
the papers.
Yeah, it was quite frustrating to be building things that people could push a button and then nobody pushed the button.
I'm sorry, Gráinne, there's also one more question.
Oh, sorry, yes.
The question is if it will also work on older versions of Excel. It does have some compatibility for previous versions. However, I would say that because it's something that it's an add-in for Excel, we are kind of pushed towards always, working on the latest version, right? So best to try with the free version to be completely sure and see how well it goes. But I would advise using the latest version of Excel and the latest version of Zebra BI for your visualization.
So when you say latest version, do you mean the 365 version, or with the desktop? What is it? 2021 is the latest now.
I think both should work the same, because I think the engine is the same on both of them. So between those two, it should work the same. But I think she's asking for maybe 2016, 2019, which were the previous desktop versions, and I'm actually not completely sure.
But it used to work with the older versions, didn't it?
It did, of course. But that's what I'm saying. They push us every time that they push out a new update. Things maybe change out a little bit, and of course all the add-ins have to be kept up to this as well. But it should have at least a couple of versions of buffer. So
that's great. And I can say, having used the free one, that you can do a fair bit. You do get that watermark, which it happened in my data, went right off the data label at the bottom that told me what month I was in. So it was a little bit of a problem, and I never did quite figure out how to solve that. But as it was being printed on paper, I just write it in.
That's naughty. We don't allow. Please don't do that.
It says any compatibilities with file format. I mean, will this work well with XLS files as well, or is this associated to an app instead of the file? So
no, I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure. To be honest, I didn't have the chance to play with many older files. I wouldn't be able to give you a straight answer. Maybe just please, write to me. You have my email. Just write this question to me and I'll get back to you. Right?
Yeah, I'll see if I still have it. There, yeah. I just put the email back in the chat.
Perfect.
So there, to contact Matija directly at that. So it looks like the questions are slowing down and it's getting to be close to the end of your tolerance probably, because it's evening and it's time to put your feet up and relax for the evening. And we have people again saying, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Nice demo, good presentation, terrific presentation to leverage a great tool, awesome presentation. I mean, they've got quite glowing comments there. This will go up on our YouTube channel shortly, so I'm sure there'll be more people get to have the advantage. Oh, Mike Thomas is saying, thank you, Gráinne and Matija, for a great session. Happy to be back at your meetup. Good time slot for me. Yes, I know, Mike. It's not a good time slot for Celia, though, which is why you got the stand-in. So anyway, thank you so much. Personally, I got a ton out of that. I really, really enjoyed it. And I can recommend having messed around with the Zebra BI free one, that it's a great place to start. If I was working in corporate, I probably would be saying to get rid of that watermark. I'd say, please pay. But anyway, thank you so much. Is there anything you wanted to share before?
Just one more thing. I hope you guys grab the template. You can also on the video recording. And if you need anything, contact me. However, one thing I would like to say is also, let's continue this conversation. I'd really like to hear if you think that tables or visualizations also from you. Maybe contact me on LinkedIn. Also, check out Zebra BI for everything that you might need, and follow me on YouTube as well. Another thing that I would like to invite you guys to, if you like this kind of things and if you think Zebra is cool, we also are having a live demo of Zebra BI, which is conducted by another colleague of mine, which is Lily, and she's the master of everything Office, even Excel. I would dare say that she's even better in Excel than me, but only when she's not listening. And please, yeah, you can just scan the QR code and grab your spot, reserve a seat, and well, tell her I sent you, and ask very hard questions, very very hard questions there.
Absolutely. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And those of you that sat through lunch and those of you who delayed your dinner, thank you so much. And don't forget to join us again in July for those 2 terrific sessions if you can.
Definitely come see Carlos.
Come and see Carlos, definitely, because Carlos actually used Zebra BI in his presentation at the summit. And he blew everybody away with it after having done, 40 minutes of his charts. And then the last 5 minutes was Zebra, and it was like
to Brazilian music. So you guys are in for a
Yes.
treat next week. I'm so glad that actually I started before him, because following Carlos's presentation would be incredibly hard.
Oh, no. Yeah, you don't want to follow him. That's too good.
Definitely.
So anyway, thank you again. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I will stop the recording now so I don't forget. Stop the recording. There we go. And